I'll start by saying that I chose the program at CUNY SPS simply because my lifestyle at the time did require an online only option. I wasn't able to make it to campus. I chose the master's in business after a career in the fashion industry, and I had started teaching as an adjunct, and I felt that the business master's was well-rounded enough that it could segue into a plethora of business opportunities, whether it was teaching in higher ed or segueing into other career paths outside of fashion. It worked for my lifestyle very well, and one of the concerns that I had about going online only was, are you going to make friends? Are you going to meet people that you can interact with in real life? And the odd thing about CUNY is it's very rare insofar as you do make friends. I've graduated almost 2 years ago now, and I truly do have what I consider lifelong friends out of that we've stepped outside of the classroom and we meet in person. And the program was just amazing. It was rigorous, it was tedious, but the professors and your classmates have such a collaboration that you really did work as a team to meet deadlines and figure out how to get things done. And the beauty of that being able to happen was because we all came from diverse backgrounds, whether it was fashion, retail, or what have you. So it's a thumbs up all around in the whole program. Does anyone have questions?
Carla, could you maybe speak to why you made the decision when you were going through the process of selecting colleges? Certainly it was an online piece, but were there other things that concern you in that process?
Finances were definitely a concern. You know, you look at a gamut of colleges, and of course we all you look at, you know, Harvard Business School, you look at NYU, and when you weigh the pros and cons, it does for many of us, specifically in the New York tri-state area, it comes down to cost. And what I felt when I did compare to other schools, specifically private versus, you know, state or city, it was affordable. You know, you graduate with minimal, if any, student loan debt. There's more assistance as far as that goes. And the curriculum, when I literally sat down and did a pros and cons and married similar programs, to me at CUNY, it was, if not directly similar, it was actually better. It offered a more well-rounded experience for a way more affordable price.
Was there anything about CUNY, and for our guests, please feel free to ask questions. I'm just kind of getting some of the conversation started. Was there anything about CUNY in particular that influenced your choice of coming to SPS?
For me personally, it was my whole business network specifically does stem in New York City, and I just felt that expanding or broadening that within my home city was more beneficial. I'm not somebody that's looking to leave the area, so it was very important that I stayed local without having to hop on a train every day, if that makes sense.
For those in attendance, please feel free to ask any questions that you're contemplating that may affect or impact your decision to come to the master's program. Please feel free to ask those.
You can't be shy in an online class.
So we have one person who sent in a question. Can we talk about why you chose this versus an MBA program?
It's an excellent question. I don't know that I have a solid answer for that. I personally felt that a master's in business was just, for my background and my future goals, was sufficient. An MBA, at the time, I didn't know that I wanted that much of a workload. not saying that we didn't have a heavy workload in the program, but it's not what I personally was looking for. If I were to carry on to another degree, would I go for an MBA? Maybe. Would I go the PhD route? Probably. It really kind of depends on, to flip it backwards before you were to apply, you'd want to look at job ads and see if they specifically look for an MBA. The jobs that I was looking for, if they require a master's, it was a master's is sufficient over an MBA.
Todd, would you like to maybe comment on that since you're currently in the program?
Oh, certainly. Yes, this is Ty Brown. I'm a graduate of the undergraduate program in the business. Subsequently, the reason why I'm presently in a MS program, I'm also in the MS in business program here at CUNY School of Professional Studies, is because I have a vast background and experience in business in various sectors. So I found that, based upon my level of experience, almost 32 years experience in the business world, in a managerial capacity mainly, I have a lot of the, I would just say, the qualitative elements to what entails running a business and managing businesses and leadership. So subsequently, I found that it'd be more beneficial to go on the MS level, at least initially, because then you get a real good sense of the theories, and the sciences behind business and how business is done versus how business is administrative. I find that our MBA program is more on the facilitating side versus on the strategic planning and the decision-making side of business. So because I've been so exposed to basically carrying out the daily functions on how a business runs, from I guess you could say from the rank and file entry level, levels all the way up to the senior management level, I didn't really find that I needed to basically go and get a degree to signify I've learned formally in an academic environment how to apply the practices and theories. I felt it more beneficial to me to be able to understand them in scope in order to be able to replicate them in a strategy that might be conducive to benefiting a business. But needless to say, yes, MBA is a viable tool to have, especially when you're starting out as a recent undergrad, because it gives you some validity that a little bit more of the specialities of a particular discipline when it comes to doing business. But even with MBAs, and I've managed dozens of them over the years, you still find that you still have to learn how to applicate that which you know how to write an essay on, or do a report on, or build a chart on. So again, as a more seasoned, I guess you could say, student, a scholar, I found that the MS is much more conducive to my career path, more so than the MBA. Now, as Carla mentioned, I do plan on entering into an MBA program. That's just for again, self-equity, and more or less, like they say, it's somewhat looked upon as far as institutions when they want to bring you upon their their team. But again, it's just a matter of a choice. The MS basically gives you a greater concentration level than MBAs. They're usually more on the general side, and then you can take a concentration along the lines. But when you go into a business program like the one at CUNY School of Professional Studies, you're basically entering into just the nature of how to understand business, and again, versus how to just go about doing business.
If I could weigh in just for one second, that we get this a lot about the MBA versus the MS degree, and Ty, you're right, and it's a deep appreciation. MBA programs are normally meant for people who have undergraduate degrees in business. Our program is a leadership program in business that helps managers understand how to apply leadership skills to get folks to do some of the things that business people do. And in doing that, they learn about business at the leadership level. So you're going to learn issues around finance, accounting, marketing, management. But the bigger thing is, how do you apply that in leading an organization? The question came up about backgrounds. We get students from across the spectrum. And MBA programs, the students normally come from undergraduate business programs, so you're building up on that. But in our program, students are coming from various industries with the intent to enter those industries at a higher level of managing those organizations within the industry. Carla, do you want to maybe speak a little bit to Jefferson Khou's request to learn a little bit more about your background and how that applies and his background in architectural, I guess in architecture?
Again, that's a good question. I think we're both stemming from creative fields where you have to build a product, or in your case, a building or a structure from the ground up. And ironically, the classmates that I collaborated with the most did work in construction because we had similar mindsets where I'll get a sketch thrown on my desk from a designer, or in your case, an engineer, or you're drawing a blueprint, and you literally have to work through every step from A through Z on how to make that sketch come into a tangible product or building or what have you. So the mindset is similar, but it's different enough where I would take pieces of something that somebody in a completely different field, I would take to my office in fashion, and I would say, oh, okay, let's think of this from an engineer's mind, or there's a math process involved, for example, that you would take. And those of us that are business people or managers, we know how to manage people, we know how to make deadlines and calendars happen. But sometimes, especially if you're older, you start to get rusty with math skills or logical thinking skills. And so this program did force you to look at projects from every angle, and you could take that outside of the classroom. And I do every single day of my life since graduating.
If I may, this is Ty again. One of the key elements to this CUNY School of Professional Studies is, as Carla mentioned before, the diversity. You're in an environment where you have business professionals all throughout some parts of the country that ultimately are both teaching as professors and adjunct professors, as well as you have classmates that are coming from a world of experience and a world of knowledge and backgrounds, both on the academia side as well as on the professional business world side. So you're able to tap into a lot of, again, primary sources on how you might be able to even better your operation or the operation of where you're employed. So you're not, caught up in a realm where you're in a school environment that might be a little bit more rural. Everyone is pretty much tied towards that particular sector, like some of the A&M schools, Texas A&M and so forth. Whereas with the School of Professional Studies, you have, again, teaching professionals that can go from an agricultural or a manufacturing or a accounting or as Carla mentioned, the fashion world, and their experience carries loads of information. And that information, again, is always utilized towards you. And one of the key elements is you're dealing with a school that's in the heart of one of the biggest, most diverse financial institutions in the world, New York City. So again, you don't really have to go abroad in order to be able to get the exposure that you can get right here within our college campus. And that carries weight because it carries you throughout your life. You establish a network, you join the alumni, you use LinkedIn and various, business social media tools, and you're able to rely upon the very sources and resources you might need to be able to carry yourself through retirement and then beyond. So I find it very conducive to both my lifestyle and some of the people that I actually even mentor when I try to explain to the younger generation that networking is paramount in today's age and society, especially on a global scale. And when you have an environment where it's always what they say, the cliche, it's not what you know, who you know. Well, you basically got a bunch of people just sitting behind a computer screen, or sometimes like I am right now at the campus here in Manhattan. And these are people that you can pretty much look upon down the line, whether it's tomorrow, next week, next year, next 10 years. And they might be the people you need to know in order to make a movement within whatever path you might want to take financially, as far as business is concerned, or entrepreneurship is concerned, or even if you want to come back into the academia world and give back through teaching the next generation. So again, I look at the school as a resource, not just in the sense of providing an education, but a resource as far as providing students a future and a pathway beyond the scale of what they might be expected just by being a graduate from a college.
Carla, while we're waiting for other students to ask questions, the students, please don't be shy. I'd ask you to sort of address what you think is different between the brick and mortar, the actual going into a building, as opposed to studying online, and what may be some of the challenges for doing that, and how do you overcome those?
Can I answer that both as an adjunct professor and as a student? Because
Yes.
okay. As a student, it depends on you as an individual and what you plan to get out of it. If it's just a degree on your wall, then you go through the motions and you make the assignments. If you're annoyingly outgoing and friendly, as I've been told I can be, you're gonna go after people. You're gonna engage in the class discussions. You're gonna get to know people. You're gonna say hi to the professors once in a while and say, hey, how's everything? Not in an obnoxious way, but just, they're people too, and you engage them, hopefully they'll engage you back. As a professor, I have yet to teach online. I'm starting that this coming semester. What makes me nervous is I tend to individualize my classes very, very much, where if I have a class of, let's say, 25 students and we're face to face, I could tell by body language that Jane in the back is not feeling well today, but she's my chatty person, let's say. So I guess what we're learning with technology, and every day there's a different advancement in it and programs available to us where we can humanize the online classroom in the same way that we do as a brick and mortar. And I'm noticing that my undergrad at another college was not the same as what I experienced at CUNY, where the professors, for the most part, did engage very, very much. So there's not much of a difference, but it's a give and take. You definitely do have to show up to class and participate in the same manner that you will in a brick and mortar. The pro as a student by far is being able to work at my pace with what worked for my schedule, whether it was at 5 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night or while I'm eating lunch or whatever. So I personally prefer the online because you have time to sit back and think and really do your work with due diligence rather than having to, I don't know, for example, I'm not the best math student, so I would get nervous if I was in a brick and mortar classroom, but I have time to really methodically plan out algebraic equations, if that makes sense. So it depends on the class, but it is ultimately up to you to show up, if that makes sense.
Ty, you want to add anything to that about your experience in brick and mortar and online?
Certainly. The brick and mortar environment is traditional, and I've always had a successful rate of learning within it. But the one thing that I would say the caveat of being in an online environment is the scheduling. You have a little bit more control over your daily intake and outputs. So it gives you a little bit more of a dynamic as how you can go out and approach accomplishing your class requirements and meeting your timelines. One of the key elements to being in an online class environment is the discipline. It takes quite a bit of discipline in order to be able to ready yourself to go and check in on the discussion boards, make sure that you're meeting with your groups and that you're correlating with everyone that needed to be correlated with, and in order to be able to be successful in the endeavor. It's not again, it's not something that is hard. It's just something that takes a little bit greater self-discipline than knowing that you got to get up in the morning and go to class. If you're not there, the professor may or may not be looking at that empty seat. So you feel a bit more apprehensive not to participate or not to show up. However, when you're in the classroom environment, there's also means in which to determine who's actually being proactive or a little laissez-faire or just falling behind, just based upon participation levels, as well as, you know, the timelines in which you see submissions are made, whether it's discussion board updates, whether it's assignment um, inputting or sharing or whatever the case. So it's not much difference. The only difference is where you actually physically preside. You know, the textbook is the textbook. You know, the exams are the exams. And again, the communication is still the communication, because the same way you can be, I guess, shy or quiet sitting behind a screen, is the same way you can sit in the back of a classroom and just, you know, try to hide behind, you know, countless students. So as Carla mentioned, the give and take is still there. The relationship with the professors is still there, because again, I have a lot of my professors in my own personal social media outlets, and we still coordinate, we still chat, and we still network. And I find no difference with a lot of my online professors as well. So I don't really think there's a downside to it. I see it more of an upside, because again, time is everything. And when you can have more time not commuting and just signing in at maybe 5 or 10 minutes prior to such, it gives you a little bit more and a little greater control over your life.
Can both of you, and starting with Carla, talk about one of your classes and that you found unique, and what is a normal process of a course, an online course that you had the opportunity to experience?
Unique. They were all unique in their own way. Because you did have to look at, you know, accounting and economics and stuff like that. For me, the marketing classes, because that's what I do and that's consequently what I teach, forced me to look at things very, very differently, and they helped me tremendously, because I would, you know, not have known things or how to approach certain things until I took the marketing classes. I also found the most challenging yet the most rewarding was our capstone project and class. What I liked about that versus, let's say, a thesis was, to me, my understanding of if we did a thesis would have been that you had to do, you know, a lot of research and a lot of writing and reviewing with a mentor. The capstone, where that differed, was this rigorous project that was for the whole semester, and you had to work remotely with a team of people. So that was very realistic to the real world, because I think no matter what industry we're in, we do work remotely. I work with factories every day in China, but I'm here in New York. And I think that that's pretty much the global world that we live in now. And the capstone project, once you saw it, mine was you had to market a yoga studio, for example. And from A through Z, you saw this come to life. And at first I was like, oh boy, how are we going to do this? But then you had somebody in advertising, you had me with the experience in marketing and stuff like that. And then we had somebody else that was in finance, and somebody actually who worked in healthcare, and we all came together. And I honestly found that the most challenging, but the most interesting and rewarding class.
Before you talk, Carla, can you talk about just from week one through the course, not in such detail, but just in a general flow of a course that students may encounter, or that you think students in general encounter at a minimum?
In general, for all classes, every semester, you mean?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If there's a kind of process.
It's pretty cut and dry. You know, just like a brick and mortar classroom, you'll get a syllabus in the beginning of the semester with a schedule, and for the master's program, each module is 1 week long, so it opens up with you know, your readings or articles and assignments to do. And most specifically, it was very rare that we didn't have a discussion board throughout each week, which is where the meat of the class is. And, you know, some people might be like, how do you do that? You have to log on and, you know, talk, you know, 3 times a week. And then what happens is, you know, you write your little paragraph and you pay attention, and depending on the class, it does become addicting. Like I have the app on my phone and I'm like, oh, so-and-so replied and wow, that was a great point. And it's, you don't, and then it makes you talk more and you're learning a lot from your peers, not just the professors in the class. So the typical week is, it's discussion based, and that's where you're, instead of raising your hand and talking to the person sitting next to you, you're doing that, from your iPhone on the train, for example.
There it looks like Kenya and Ty, just hold 1 second. It looks like Kaya Laud has a question.
I can't see the question, so.
Yeah, so I think I joined like a couple of minutes late, like 3 or 4 minutes. So I just had a question about the requirements. Like, what are the requirements to get into this program? And
go ahead. Kia?
Yeah.
I'm going to speak to that after, if you hold on for about 15 minutes. I'll speak to some of the questions on the requirements, but I wanted our alumni and our current student to sort of address some of the things that happens in making a decision to come, some of the experiences that they have while they're in the program, and what happens after they leave in terms of do they have buyer's remorse or how they experience. But I will come back and address that question for you.
Oh, I can answer that. That's a great statement to talk about. One of the key elements that I really, really enjoyed is the engaging that we have with fellow students. Yes, the professors are there for us, and I see that someone, Jefferson, posted a question to that effect. But needless to say, the professors are always there for you. You have their phone numbers, you have their email address, and they chime in on the discussion boards, throughout, the week, the week load, and the week long course load. And needless to say, it's the students. It's basically learning again with a diverse group of individuals that come up with different, I guess you could say, theories and processes on how to even do the projects that we tend to have to do together. And you learn from that. You learn that you don't always have the answer. As much as you may think you will always have the answer and you're always going to get it, there's those moments where the answer could be right in front of you and you just don't see it. And then you have your fellow classmates that are basically chiming in and posting and asking questions, and those things usually tie into the insecurities that you have as far as getting what the learning objective is. So you don't just have the professor to learn from, you also have your classmates. And that goes beyond the scope of just in the classroom, because President Point, I still have 3 individuals that I still network with that already graduated from the graduate program, and we help each other with our own professional lives. There's, again, I have I would say a colleague now, as I refer to him as, that's basically a graduate that's really astute in accounting. And when I get hung up on something I'm doing in Excel that's a little bit more advanced, I just reach out to them and I ask them, listen, I'm working on this model and right now I'm coming to an error, can you take a look at it and this and the other. This is their love. I know accounting, but it's not my love, it's my pet peeve. So needless to say, I shoot it over to them. They take a look at it, they see what my errors are, they make the corrections the same way a professor would, or we do with each other within our groups, and then subsequently they provide it back to me with an explanation as to where it was and where it needs to go from there. And now I'm back on course, and that's in my professional world. So you do get a good overlap as far as the academic versus the professional, because the same way you're working on an assignment for a professor, for your professor, for your class, subsequently you come up with hangups that, again, you go over to the, your chief risk officer and ask them, listen, I'm working on a model and it's for a class assignment and something I can't figure out. Now you got your a tutor right there sitting in the office with you from 9 to 5. That's probably not going to charge you. And that's another point. School of Professional Studies, which I believe the professor will chime in on, is we have account with tutor.com. So you have tutors available to you 24/7, 365 days in the calendar year that you can always reach out to get assistance with your learning objectives and, off the record, even with your business objectives, because again, they're there to tutor you, not just in passing your class, but learning the objective. And the objective is beyond the scope of just in school. So again, it's a very good craft. It's, you know, it's a very good, I would call, vehicle to utilize, and we're always here for each other.
Carla, if you want to jump in on that question, it's more about the forums from engaging the professors when you're stuck on some issues or other support that you found.
Yeah, I think I have to second everything that Ty just said. It's such an odd place, because it's one of few institutions that you truly do have these lifelong relationships, both outside the classroom. We have an amazing alumni staff that is engaging. They invite you to events, and so many people that I've graduated with, we truly do keep in touch. It's just an amazing network. It's almost like, if I'm asked to attend an event, I never hesitate to say yes, assuming my schedule is clear, because I don't mean to sound cliched, but it's like going home, literally, where you're going to go spend time with family and people that you've made these connections with, not just to network, but just really understood you as a person, and vice versa.
Can you guys talk to your group projects and how often you're in groups?
I would say practically every class, every semester had some kind of a group project.
Did you see it as a necessity, and what is the value that you believe you take away from the groups?
At first, I'm not going to lie, it was like, oh gosh, here's another group project, and you felt that you could have done it yourself much faster. But then at the end of the road, you really did realize, and to circle back to something Ty just said, was that we think we know it all, especially those of us that went back as adult learners. I have all this experience and I'm fabulous. We tend to go into that mode. And what you learn at the end of it is you become very humble that you don't know it all, and you need the help of other actual human beings to get through a project, especially the hard ones. And you need to learn to speak up and ask for help, and not have an ego, and you're not the smartest person in the room, and everything else that goes along with it. The group projects at the end of the day are what made you become close with classmates. If you decided to take another class with them the following semester and you were able to pick your group mate, that was helpful, because then you knew how that was going to run and stuff like that.
Ty, you want to speak to group work?
Yes, well, like I said, the team projects is something that, and the group projects is something that I find at first was going to be something I wasn't going to be liking to. I try to, sometimes I look at myself as an individual more than as, I guess you could say, a team lead, but that has changed. Now I find that working with a team and working in groups is the best way of going about doing business, especially when it comes to, schooling. At the end of the day, you can't take on that you will figure it all out and you can do it all. The projects can be quite hefty. I mean, they're comprehensive. So if you're trying to do it all and you're not good in some facet of what's required, let's say you're not great in marketing, or you're not great in accounting, or you're just not great in, writing to the level to where it's going to be, dynamic. Well, you can work within the team's abilities. And first off, in the first week of school, when we do our introductions, that's an excellent process that the professors put forth, because at the end of the day, you get to see the talents of the people within your actual class, their background, what they do for a living, what schools they attended prior to such, and we share. And what some of the things that we share is our talents and skill sets. So you kind of get a gauge of who's great in marketing, who's great in accounting, who's great in delivery, who's great in presentation if you got to do a visual or an audible presentation for the project. So what you can do then is you can try to tap into what your talents are, what your strengths are, work towards that while you build up some of your weaknesses, allow the others in the group to present their strengths and talents as we disseminate the actual, workload and the the learning requirements, and then bring it all together. And then you have a comprehensive package that you can present and is tailored to people's strengths, and you don't have to worry so much about whether it's going to be conveyed properly. And you get a greater buy-in that way, because rather than have everyone be encroached upon doing something they're not comfortable with, not highly certain of, you're just basically building the teams where we just work towards our strengths. And then when it comes down to the overall weaknesses, then we disseminate that, and then we work that out, and then subsequently we're all achievers. And that's life. I mean, there's no organization on this planet that you can say one person did it all. It all takes a team. It takes a team to build a company, and it pretty much takes almost a team to destroy one. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is learning to work within those groups can seem a little bit, scary at first, a little uncertain at first, because you're worrying about others' contributions and considerations. But once the buy-in is established, everyone is basically, all hands on deck and making it happen.
I want to make one comment to everyone. We are a management and leadership program. You can't lead without a team, and you can't lead a team if you don't understand how teams function, how they form, how they go through conflict, how they decide how to resolve that conflict, and how they decide they're going to move to work toward an outcome. So all of the courses have them built in, because it is a leadership program. And it may not be for someone that does not like working with groups, but in order to talk about leadership, we have to have you in a group, and you're going to pick up some dynamics. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to have conflict. You're going to have all of these issues. And so the group projects become really, really important in building on your leadership ability. This is a master's program, and hopefully when you leave, you'll go and you'll have a team of people to lead. And it's better to lead understanding how people work in groups. Moving on to about textbooks, y'all can talk about Carla. You may want to begin to talk about textbooks in your classes, and whether there are textbooks in all of your classes or other things that they use.
Yes, there are textbooks that are required. I think since I graduated, and somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, they are moving towards a textbook-free classroom in as many ways possible, and that's to keep the cost down for the student. I personally need an actual book in my hands, because it's just the way my brain works. I need to turn pages and highlight and write notes in margins. So I did purchase most of them, but they were available, fairly affordably on Amazon or used. And then a lot of another reason you're going to want to make friends in your classes is a lot of times we would flip-flop. So if somebody that I became friendly with was taking this class this semester and I was taking it next, we would trade and vice versa. And so I would give the book to them and they would give me another one the next semester. So again, it's depending on your needs and the professors.
Type of your experience. Type, do you have the same experience that Carla has?
Oh yes, certainly. I mean, I'm a little different. I love the textbook. I love the feel of the actual book, especially if it's just like a novel. But needs to say, the electronic version is also a handy tool. A lot of the classes don't even require textbooks. Some of the stuff, the things we use, business tools, are online. One of which is, let's say, quantitative reasoning. That's a class that we take where we got to use a model builder. You download it online from Pearson's, and you have access to the actual model builder, as well as you have access to Excel QM, and you have access to the electronic textbook. So those things are basically correlated to where a lot of the material transfer in directly into, let's say, a template, versus having to type the data. You click on the link, the data transposes into the Excel spreadsheet or into the business tool. unlike with a conventional textbook where you got to just basically type everything in and hope you didn't make any kind of grammatical errors or superimpose any numbers that could throw everything out of whack and give you the wrong results. But needless to say, it's the school is not, I would say textbook heavy, the way they want to load you down with a lot of textbooks electronically or otherwise. So it's more about the material, and it's more about the real world scenarios, like the case studies. One of the things I really didn't get exposed to in one of my previous colleges, but I got heavily exposed to at CUNY School of Professional Studies, is the Harvard Business, Harvard Business School's review. Most of the case studies come from Harvard Business. That tells you right first and foremost that you're handling the same case studies, you're handling the same requirements as if you was in Harvard, because you're using the case studies that Harvard students use. So at the end of the day, the school is more dynamic in offering those and PowerPoint presentations that help, reiterate the key points of the learning objectives versus having you tied to so many books. Now, yes, the textbooks are a requirement to some extent, because there's always fresh material that comes out that you got to be exposed to learn from in order to be progressive. But it's not like a traditional college where one course probably loads you with, I guess, 2 to 3 textbooks at an expense of about anywhere between $700 to $1,300, and you dip into a little bit of this one, that one, and the other one, and then you just walk away with it, with dust on it on the bookshelf, and you just learn half of it. But needless to say, it's comprehensive in their approach. It's not a lot of cost bearing to incur, and again, there's a lot of interactiveness with the textbooks these days.
We have one last question here, and it's about not having experience with online degrees. Would you say that your courses always feel like they're always online, or do you have experiences offline that in the courses that you've gone in and some of the courses you may have been in?
If I may, we also have here at the school some hybrid courses. Now, I love them. One of which was the statistics class. That was a hybrid course where it's online, but once a week we actually met at the actual school in order to do lab work, which was excellent because, again, it gave you some direct connect with visual learning with the professor, because he or she will be able to basically walk you through the application of doing the formulas, show you some shortcuts that you might not be as aware of in Excel that exist, in order to make the task much more simpler and intuitive. Because the key element to our school when it comes to the hybrid classes, I noticed they don't want to take the approach where they just want to inoculate you with a bunch of what's in the textbook, as much as they want you to learn how to pretty much use the tools available to you that you're going to use in everyday life once you graduate from CUNY School of Professional Studies. So they're going to show you the approaches on how to accomplish, versus just like with an MBA program, just input, do this way, try to keep track of what you did, and then ultimately you can go and replicate it somewhere else and get a salary for it. No, the approach is more or less, okay, I'm going to show you how this works and why this works this way, so you can utilize it more, I can say, creatively and intuitively down the line, and even experiment with, which is always something that they try to, again, inoculate us with. Utilize. So the hybrid classes are excellent means. So everything is not always 100% online, and they are available to you in many different, categories as far as the school requirements.
Yeah, let me just clear up one thing. The master's program courses are all online, but we do have hybrid courses that you might want to take, particularly if they are applying as an elective course. So you will have the opportunity to do what Ty is saying. But some of the courses give you experiences outside of the classroom. So although they may be online, I think many of the professors try to give some experiential exercise that you would do outside of the classroom, where in your own locale. So I did want to correct that. Just in terms of the master's program, the courses are online. Talk a little bit about about how many classes you take and why you take the number you do take, because we're part-time and students can be full-time students as well.
You want me to start with that?
Yeah, Carla, if you would, I'm sorry.
Okay, in the master's program, we were only allowed to take 2 per semester. If you wanted to, you could request after your first semester, depending on your GPA, to take, I think, 3, but it goes through a department approval process. And at first I was a little bit taken aback because I was in a hurry to get the degree and blah, blah, blah. But with that said, in the master's program, I enjoyed that it was 2 classes per semester because it allowed you to focus more on the class itself, and you were walking away with more information rather than hurrying up to download information into your brain, and then you're just walking away with a piece of paper and you didn't retain anything.
Todd, how many courses are you taking?
Yes, I'm taking 2 courses per semester. This is my last 2 classes now this semester, but I did take 3 courses one semester. And again, it was much more of a challenge. As Carla mentioned, it becomes a little bit more difficult to focus in and retain a lot of information. Again, it's a master's program, so it's much more, a little bit more to much more in depth than an undergrad. So the retention level has to be, considered. It's, you can't just go through a chapter and say, okay, I got it, I did the assignment and move on. Because when you get to the end, you're going to see that it all runs concurrent. It's going to compound where you're going to have to be able to utilize that which is in chapter 12, 16, or 21, with that was in chapter 1, 2, and 3. So, you want to make sure that you're only taking enough classes to where you can actually benefit by ultimately learning the objective versus just covering the objectives.
Talk a little bit about what has been the benefit since you've graduated, particularly you, Carla, out of the graduate program.
The benefits have honestly been endless. My goal in getting the master's, as I said earlier, was to allow me the opportunity to become an adjunct professor, because you have to have the master's in order to do that, at least the master's. So professionally speaking, it definitely has fulfilled thus far its goal for me in the ability to teach in higher ed. And I am in the process of seeing where it takes me in my business realm as well.
Ty, you're getting ready to graduate. What do you foresee this is going to do for you?
Well, I foresee a lot more, how can you say, responsibilities being thrown my way. I can go as far as saying that where I'm presently employed for the last 3 years, they know that I'm in graduate school and they know that I'm graduating soon. And already they're pressed upon me to take on greater roles and responsibilities, which is one of the reasons why I went into the program, because again, it offers leverage in your professional life when it comes to upward mobility. So at the end of the day, I already know that once I get my master's in business management and leadership, it's going to set me greater in the eyes and the view of my current employer to handle more, to take upon more, and to lead more. So it's it's worth its weight in gold, as they say, and it's a worthwhile endeavor and investment in one's, again, career and opportunity paths, because again, it gives you that much more validity and confidence in what you do, because you can signify, I know this, I've done this, I've experienced this, and now let me show you this. And that goes well in life, especially starting out when you're young and you don't have a lot of work experience, and you want to show that you know more than just the person next to you because you hold a degree that's significant in the vocation in which you take upon.
I don't see any other questions. Are there any other questions that you all may have? I'll speak to the requirements quickly, but I want to make sure that we address your questions. I see there's another question. Time restraints. Carla, why don't you talk about time restraints, and then Todd, talk about the time restraints for you considering full-time or family or other things that compete with your time.
the time restraints definitely were probably the biggest challenge in making the decision to go back. It does take a village, as that cliched expression goes. My husband had to be on board. My son, who was 6 at the time, had to be on board, believe it or not. And it really did take, you know, having to decline invitations to certain family or friend events at certain moments. And you only attended the major things like weddings and stuff like that as needed. But it's just a matter of, you know, you look at yourself as though you're in the Olympics and that gold medal is right in front of you in every class that you finish and every semester that you get through. It's almost there, almost there. So you have to look at the reason constantly as to why you want this degree. Why did you decide to go back? And giving up is just, it's not an option. You can't go that route. So it's worth the time constraint. And it's a matter of just being organized and looking at the syllabus and looking at the modules every week once they open. Okay, I know I have to get this, and this done this week, and you try your best to work your schedule around it. You know, some nights it's going to be a late night of writing a paper, but if you're ahead of the game and run out of the gate in the beginning of the module opening, you should be fine. It's just a dedicated time management.
Thank you for that. The student question, and I think that was just perfect in terms of summing up what is required in terms of your mindset coming into a program. So the restraints are there. In terms of time to graduate, that's really on you. As long as you're academically performing, it's fine. You have the option to sit out 1 semester. You sit out 2 semesters in a row, then you have to reapply for the program, which is a simple process. Our concern is that you're making academic progress and you're being successful in the program. Some students may take 2 years to get through the program. Some may take 4 or 5 years, but it really is left up to them, because online really sort of caters to folks who come to us that have these busy sort of lives. So we don't put you out the program at the end of 2 years. The way you end up leaving the program is if you're just not performing at the level of a graduate student. So that's the other issue to time constraints. I'm going to make some final comments for those who are here. The requirements to get in the program, you should have received a presentation, and if you didn't, I will ask that they send the presentation to everyone who's in attendance. But basically the criteria is a 3.0 GPA, 2 letters of recommendations, preferably from someone who either supervised you or who you studied under that can speak to your academic capabilities, and then a letter sort of addressing why this program, why not another program, why would you want to be a part of it. So it's for you to clearly make the argument of how this program can help you achieve your own life objectives. So we know that there's a tie between you and the program, and when students connect to the program correctly, they tend to be very successful. And then finally, all transcripts of colleges that you went to, academic transcripts. I would caution you, do not take yourself out of the selection. That is made by the business program. I would ask that if you have some challenges on your GPA, just sort of write to that a little bit so we understand why you may have had some challenges. But our decisions are made in a very comprehensive way. So I would tell you, don't get caught on the GPA. Submit everything. Try to submit the best letters you can have written on your behalf. Certainly really give some thought to your own letter, your personal statement about how it connects, and then that would make a world of difference. So those are the criteria for coming into the program. You will get other things about the program in a presentation if you hadn't already seen them. Certainly other issues are online, but I think what my colleagues have done, and their alumni of the undergraduate as well as our graduate program, is just try to share with you in a personal way their experiences, and hopefully you can take some of that away as you start to think about coming into the program. Carla and Ty, if you have any last comments, please take a minute to do so.
I'm good.
Any last comments, Carla?
No, I think I'm good unless anybody has specific questions.
Okay, Ty, any last comments?
Well, I just want to say that it's a pleasure, meeting you guys that's out there. I look forward to seeing you guys join the alumni as graduate students. And subsequently, do know that like any institution, everyone that's on this call has an undergraduate degree, so we know what it takes to succeed. So take in consideration that the school is out to see you succeed, has the means for you to succeed, and all you have to do is, again, put the best foot forward in order to work towards that success, and it's a given. So again, as a member of the alumni, I would like to say it's a pleasure and look forward to working with you.
Okay, thank you. There's two other questions I'm going to answer them, and those will be the last two. I do appreciate it. No GMAT is required. I know this is CUNY, but what college do we graduate? Yeah, you graduate from the School of Professional Studies. We are part of the Graduate Center right now. We're becoming an independent college, but you will graduate from the City University of New York School of Professional Studies. Okay, with that, I want to thank you all for taking the time to hear us. I want to thank Carla and I want to thank Ty for sharing with you. We look forward to your application. Have a wonderful day and look to see you in the program soon. Thanks, Carla. Thanks, Ty.
Thank you and good luck, everyone.
Thank you.